Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you guys this Monday night. We're live, we're national, and looking forward to your calls. If you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And man, let me tell you, what a weekend. There's so much news, so much to discuss over the weekend. You got the big chainsaw that was awarded to Elon Musk by President Javier Milei of Argentina. That happened at CPAC. I was, as you know, from Friday, I was at CPAC on Friday and Saturday. And it was very, very interesting times. Lots of interesting things going on there. Lots of fun stuff. There's some videos that I posted about that on Instagram. Then last night, news breaks that President Trump names a deputy director of the FBI. Kash Patel signs off on that, bringing him on board. Listen to this.
On Sunday, President Trump named former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino as deputy director of the FBI, writing, quote, "A man of incredible love and passion for our country has just been named the next deputy director of the FBI by the man who will be the best ever director, Kash Patel. Working with our great new U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi and Director Patel, fairness, justice, law, and order will be brought back to America, and quickly."
Big shout out and a word of congratulations to Dan Bongino. He's a really good guy, and I can't imagine somebody with more zeal and more ability to do a job like this. So good for America, good for El Trompito, good for Kash Patel, and good for all of us. Congratulations, Dan. And I can't wait to see what him and Kash Patel tackle in reforming the FBI. It's going to be a good thing, and it's going to be I'm going to say a good time to watch. So we're going to keep our eyes peeled on that. Somebody else that's been appointed to the administration, the first ever pardon czar. The president of the United States has appointed a black woman, so a woman of color, a woman that is an ex-con, and she's now part of the administration as the pardon czar. Listen to this.
She's going to be my pardon czar, okay? She has been just so outstanding, and I'm so proud of you, and we're giving Alice a full pardon. You can do whatever you want in life and just keep doing the great job you're doing. You know, Alice was in prison for doing something that today probably wouldn't even be prosecuted. You've been an inspiration to people. And we're going to be listening to your recommendation on pardons. You're going to go over and she's going to be my pardon czar, okay? And you're going to find people just like you that should not have happened.
Blacks, women, Hispanics. Trump has a very, very diverse administration. And I just find it remarkable that yet people still want to run with the Trump is a racist tropes. And you know, they'll cover this up by saying, well, look, he just fired C.Q. Brown, the black Air Force general that was chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Yeah, but he also appointed this guy, right? Didn't he appoint him as the chief of staff of the Air Force when he was president? So, I mean, people are just so quick to try to pull the trigger. The reality here is I think Trump is a smart guy. He nominated or named the first woman to ever serve as chief of staff. He's had so many firsts that were women, firsts that are people of color, firsts that are people that are gay. He's very, very, very open to just bringing in the people I believe that he thinks are right for the job. And you got to give him kudos for that. Kudos for bringing in the right people. He even has an ability to bring in people that otherwise would be harmed by doing something like this. What do I mean? Dan Bongino, right? He put it right there in his thing. Bongino's got a very big radio show. He's got a very big podcast, one of the top ones in the country week after week. He's a very successful entrepreneur in the digital space. He doesn't need to go to Washington to make whatever they're going to pay him, $100,000 or whatever, $200,000. But yet he's putting all of that on the line because he loves his country, loves his family, and he's of service to America. And Trump attracts the best and the brightest, in my opinion. He really does, because he empowers them to do what they got to do, just like Elon Musk with his big chainsaw from Argentinian President Javier Milei. So that was really exciting. I also, a quick shout out to Bianca Della Garza and the Newsmax team for having me on. I got to do a little interview from the Newsmax stage at CPAC. And what was really cool about CPAC is, they do this straw poll. And I believe the winner of the most trusted news outlet part of the poll was Newsmax. Most trusted news channel, Newsmax, at least by CPAC attendees. So congratulations to Newsmax on that. Now, speaking of that, and we're going to get into this in a little bit, but there was a shakeup, a media shakeup over the weekend. MSNBC has fired several of their hosts, starting with, drum roll, please, Joy Reid, host of The Readout. Tonight was her final episode. And I am not celebrating her being fired, contrary to what you might think. I'm really not, because I try to never wish something that I wouldn't want for me, and I wouldn't want to get fired. What I'm pointing out here is not Joy Ann Reid and her misfortune here. What I'm pointing out is that MSNBC is making a business move, because I think they've realized they're losing listeners, or viewers, I should say, and in any business, you have to go where the customer guides you to go, right? That's what a free market is all about. So whether they like it or not, they have to go in this direction. I'm pretty sure the ideologues, which I'm sure there are some at CNN, I'm pretty sure that they don't like the token Republican that they have there. I think his name is Scott Jennings. And he's great, right? He always hits them over the head with logic and truth, and they're always dumbfounded. He's all over social media. He does a very good job. Former McConnell guy, as I understand it. And what's interesting here is I'm pretty sure they don't like him, per se, but they need him, right? I'm sure they don't like Harry Enton either, and I don't think he's a Republican, per se, but he doesn't always toe the company line, because ultimately even ideologues, and this goes in both directions, right? You can work for Fox News, let's say, which has a conservative bent in their editorial, and be the biggest of libs. And I think you could be the biggest of libs and work in a lot of places, as long as you are professional about yourself. The same way there's probably a lot of closeted conservatives working in these organizations that, for hope in not being discovered, they're like, maybe nobody will notice. But they're not going to, come to work wearing their red MAGA hat. A job's a job, and I get that. Not everybody's willing to only work in something that they ideologically align with. I get that. But for MSNBC, excuse me, to make this step shows a lot, right? They made some moves here. Jen Psaki, Silent P, of course, she is sliding into a new primetime slot as part of this shakeup that includes the firing of Joy Reid. And that's one of the big developments here. Let me see who else they got rid of. I think they got rid of Alex Wagner as well, it looks like here. Or at least she's being replaced. Her slot is being replaced by Jen Psaki. Let me see who else they have. The overhaul left. Jonathan Capehart, Katie Fang, Jose Diaz-Balart are all gone as well, it looks like. Huh. Wow. Now, that could just be because they can't afford it, or they were just too far to the left and they want to rebrand and they don't want to lose viewers. They want to start catching back up. The fact that, I'm pretty sure a bunch of them wringing their hands saying, how on earth do people, even if it's CPAC goers, how do they say that Newsmax is the most trusted name in cable news? No, I think it is. That's the majority of the news I watch is Newsmax. But I could see the people at CNN, and I could sense the disdain that they may have over something like this. And they realize, you know what? It's time for us to get in on this. So we're going to continue our discussion about the media. I think we have some audio of Joy Reid and her final goodbye and shedding some tears on the air. And we'll share that with you when we come back. Plus, DOGE continues to slash and cut with the big chainsaw. El Trompito Donaldus Magnus and Elon Musk. And there's a bunch of lawsuits as a result. There's a bunch of lawsuits on the women in men's sports, or men and women's sports, I should say, and plenty of other stuff that's going on. Plus, Elon Musk sent a letter out asking people what they did last week. And President Trump weighed in on that as well. So more on all of that when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You're talking about the last email that was sent where he wanted to know what you did this week. You know why he wanted that, by the way? I thought it was great. Because we have people that don't show up to work and nobody even knows if they work for the government. So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, because a lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist. They're trying to find, that's how badly various parts of our government were run by, and especially by this last group. So what they're doing is they're trying to find out who's working for the government. Are we paying other people that aren't working? And, where's all that? Where's the money gone? We have found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud so far. And we've just started. We're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there, because maybe somebody stole the gold, tons of gold. So I think it was actually, there was a lot of genius in sending it. We're trying to find out if people are working. And so we're sending a letter to people, please tell us what you did last week. If people don't respond, it's very possible that there is no such person or they're not working.
That is President Trump, again, doubling down on a letter from the DOGE service, the United States DOGE service, and lots of legal stuff coming out of this, right? You've got the judge blocking the Department of Education, federal personnel from sharing data. Let me see, another headline here talks about how Elon Musk might be getting sued yet again, and so much more. So I want to get some advice here, because there's two legal angles on this. One is, do the federal employees have a leg to stand on? And B, what happens if criminality is found in the way this money's being spent, and how that works out? And we're going to find out, because our good friend Doug Burns is with us. Doug Burns is the former chief of the criminal division of the Department of Justice, former federal prosecutor, and he's a defense attorney now. Doug Burns, welcome back.
Thanks, Rich. Good to be with you.
You bet, man. So let's talk about this. Every day, it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that every day there is a new lawsuit related to DOGE, and it seems like the administration is doing a good job winning most of them. Would you agree, or am I off on that?
No, they're actually doing pretty well on them, which tells you a lot, because historically, and by that I mean, going back to the Trump era, we call it, starting in 2016, there were so many court decisions that went against them, which were even, sort of improperly against him. So to see him being successful on a number of them tells you a lot. I mean, basically, from 30,000 feet, as I like to say, This is a separation of powers situation, obviously. Article 2 of the Constitution vests executive authority in the President of the United States. Many scholars will tell you, legal scholars, that the authority is very broad. You've heard that. But again, when you get into the whole cable and media toxic, it's all in one direction and all in the other direction, a lot of these principles sort of get mistranslated. There are obviously limits to Article 2 power also. But again, you're seeing a hysterical resort to courts. But to answer your question, he's actually done pretty well in a number of the cases, Rich.
Now, what do you think is the recourse here? The president is asking his employees in the executive branch, hey, for those of you who are still out on remote leave or COVID remote situation with your work, could you tell me what you did last week? And they want to see if they're actually still working, if these are real employees, he said at one point. And I think the reason for that is because they just uncovered there were fake people on the Social Security rolls. So if there are fake people that could potentially collect there, then maybe there are fake people in the federal government collecting a paycheck, and where's that money going? Now, I don't think they've proven any of that, but it's a working theory that if they can disprove it, it's great for all of us, and if they prove it to be true, it's horrible.
There's tremendous waste in the federal government. I know wherever I speak, I dealt with the so-called administrative state many times. I was in a couple of cases with OSHA, occupational safety. Couldn't believe sort of, the arrogance and the power they were wielding, unelected officials. Hang a footnote, the irony of saying, Elon Musk wasn't elected. Well, neither was Antoni Fauci. And I could go on and on and on. Yeah, on and on with examples of very powerful people in the federal government, Rich, who were never elected. The unelected bureaucratic state, it's the same playbook, call the conservatives, accuse them, of doing something, which is just really very ignorant, because the point is there is a lot of power. Now, everything is characterizations in these media cycles, so you characterized it perfectly, not to blow smoke at you, but the point is, if you're trying to determine, well, wait a minute, these people aren't even required to come to the office. Are they actually even working? Maybe they're not. That's the focus. But the way the media that's against Trump frames it right away is, oh, this is ridiculous. How can you do this? And on. They foam at the mouth. Hang another footnote. They have a legitimate point, and kudos to Kash Patel. That was smart. I mean, the FBI can't necessarily start divulging exactly what they're doing. So that's an example of an agency that you wouldn't want to have memos going to or emails saying, please tell me what you're doing. Oh, well, I'll be sarcastic, Rich. Mm-hmm. We're working with this confidential informant in a huge drug case. Let me give you his name. The point is,
right.
You can't do that. So, but again, you could also say we're working on a huge drug case, yada, yada, without a lot of details. But the point is, your formulation is the correct one. They are perfectly entitled to start cleaning up the idea that COVID was completely abused to the point where people have no-show jobs. Okay, they don't have to show up.
Well,
and that's what they're getting at. So the whole DOGE thing, the bad news for the left, the really bad news is that Donald Trump as president, like him or hate him, is exposing a lot of corruption.
Yeah, well, I want to continue to pull on that thread with you, because I think this letter leads to a few more legal angles, and I want to explore that with you. Folks, we're on with Doug Burns, former chief of the criminal division at the Department of Justice. He's a defense attorney now and a friend of the program. Doug Burns, stick with us, folks. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The only question is whether my Republican colleagues will do the right thing. And let me say to Republicans, who may vote for Kash Patel, this vote will haunt you. You will be held accountable. You will rue the day of this vote if it's in favor of Kash Patel, because the American people will hold you accountable, and we will make sure that the American people know about this vote.
Well, that's Senator Richard Blumenthal on Thursday, just before the Senate voted to confirm Kash Patel as FBI director. And I guess everybody knows about the vote, Senator, because he's in. Our guest is Doug Burns, former chief of the criminal division in the Department of Justice. And Doug Burns, I want to get your take. Obviously, over the years, you've worked on many cases involving your colleagues at the FBI. And the appointment of Kash Patel and now Deputy Director Dan Bongino seem to be sending waves through the media and through the establishment. Your thoughts?
It's the height of hypocrisy and double standards. So, in other words, let's have a little fun and just reverse it. Let's assume that Richard Blumenthal liked Kash Patel, and he was very much in favor of him. And let's say that I, Doug Burns, objected to him. Blumenthal would pompously lecture me. What, are you kidding me? This man was an assistant United States attorney. He was a federal defense lawyer. He was in a high position in the Department of Justice. What, are you, an idiot? He would mock me and patronize me and lecture me. These are the biggest phonies I've ever seen, ever, okay? So the point is, you really don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out what's going on, which is that they abused the executive wing of the Bureau, leading to all kinds of confusion. Liberal friends said to me with ignorance and arrogance, oh, you must be so upset at the FBI being criticized. They have no idea that 99% of the FBI are great frontline agents doing real cases, not fake political ones. Real cases, and they're wonderful and great people, okay? But the executive wing went completely political. They went crazy. You had Peter Strzok, an FBI agent, literally writing, "We'll make sure Trump doesn't become president." So now, when the tides turn and the other side wins the election and they put some people in to clean it up, they're having a not surprising hysterical meltdown. I lost a lot of respect for Blumenthal just in hearing the clip you just played. He has a very good background. I think he was Attorney General of Connecticut. I think he was a federal prosecutor. So for him to say this is complete nonsense, honestly.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what he's not. He's not a Vietnam War hero, as he once claimed.
No, he's not, and he lied about that up and down and got away with it, of course, because nobody cared. Look at what happened with the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic side. He flat out lied about taking a gun into combat, and everybody said, oh, he misspoke. That's fine if you want to say that, but when it's in reverse, and if it's anything Donald John Trump says, they foam at the mouth hysterically and never ever say, oh, he misspoke, or, oh, this was the real context. So you can tell by the tone of my voice that I'm good and burnt out with the double standards and the hypocrisy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's, part of the nature of politics. But in terms of, I guess, reputation and what they're bringing to the table, this duo here of former investigator in the House Intelligence Committee, Kash Patel, former federal prosecutor, former federal public defender, and former Secret Service agent teaming up to bring reform to the FBI, at least on paper. It sounds terrific to me. Your thoughts?
No, they're very solid. I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, again, there's two ways of discussing all this stuff. One is a normal discussion, and then the other one is, the cable toxicity, media toxicity discussion. So Dan Bongino, in fairness, I'll hang a footnote. Look, he was very, very, very aggressively pro-Trump. I'm very familiar with his work at the Fox News Channel and then podcasting, and he was. But again, back to I know I sound like a broken record, but back to my double standards and hypocrisy, Barack Obama explained to me that elections have consequences. So now we use the exact same rule on him. That's all. Not complicated.
Exactly.
No, seriously. I mean, you can't lecture me. And by the way, another related corollary, executive order. Barack Obama. I like President Obama, by the way. Let's just be fair. I didn't agree with many of his policies. I'm a Republican. I'm conservative. But the point is, I like him. He's fine. But the point is, he goes, all I need is a fountain pen. He pompously lectures everybody about executive orders. Now Donald Trump issues executive orders and they have hysterical meltdowns.
Right. Yeah,
no, I mean, seriously.
I remember that. I remember.
I'm telling it like it is, like Howard Cosell. You remember him? Many of the listeners are probably too young, but he was the famous sports.
No, he had the great voice.
He was a lawyer. Howard Cosell was a lawyer. Did you know that, Rich?
No, I did not.
Yeah, he was a lawyer. That's what's interesting. And he really wanted to get into broadcasting. Many levels down, I'm in that same sort of boat. I was a lawyer for many years, decades, in fact, and I wanted to get into media and broadcasting, and I did. Not quite at the level of Cosell, obviously, but the point is, he was a very smart guy, Cosell, and he used to say, I tell it like it is.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good little piece of trivia.
Why not?
There.
What's wrong with it? He was great.
Yeah. No, he was terrific. And great hair. Great hair, by the way.
Oh, yeah. The toupee blew off during a Monday Night Football game. Remember that?
Yeah,
that was funny.
Terrific. So we've got Kash Patel, we've got Dan Bongino. And just as an editorial note, as part of our conversation here, I want to say that, because you were saying something before about the majority of the people in the FBI, I can also attest to the fact that the majority of the people I know, right, which is very anecdotal to me, but those people I know in the FBI are solid patriots, solid people that are
solid
also
people. But again, Rich, sorry to interrupt you. They're doing real cases, okay? I spent 9 years with the Bureau doing cases involving people stealing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, committing interstate crimes at very, very serious levels, violent crime, organized crime. And now you get into this nonsense. The person lied in a meeting. He's a criminal. You must lock him up. I mean, it's insane. Mayor Adams, okay, 3 guys are in a prison yard. I'll make it quick. The first guy says, I'm in for murder. The second guy says, I'm in for rape. The third guy says, I'm in because I had a business class ticket and I flew first class.
So you agree that it was a witch hunt?
Real crimes, okay? This is political nonsense in every direction. Adams is a Democrat, okay? But I'm just saying, stop with the political cases. They're complete nonsense, okay? I'm used to cases with hundreds of kilos of drugs, violence, organized crime, bank robbery. So stop with this nonsense that the guy took a ticket. And by the way, hang another footnote, Menendez was a serious bribery case. He had gold ingot bars, $500,000 of cash. That's a real case. But taking a flight upgrade is not.
Good to know, because I'm no fan of Mayor Eric Adams. And I find myself
I'm not either, by the way, which shows my credibility as a legal analyst.
Right, yeah. And I find myself, when I look at the people I agree with saying this is a witch hunt, and the people I don't like Kathy Hochul, going after him, I got to think there's probably more good than bad to this guy at this point, because if Kathy Hochul's going after him, and I think Emil Bove, President Trump's lawyer and now deputy AG, he's very solid in my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, but occasionally I can play one on the radio.
But he made a mistake. He made a mistake in the memo out, Rich, real quick.
Tell me.
Big mistake. The 2-page memo. You are familiar with co-op boards. Somebody applies to buy an apartment in a co-op. You turn them down, and you don't say a word. Why?
I was president of an HOA once.
There you go. I was president of the board in my building, by the way. But the point, so that's why I know a little bit about it. But the point is, you don't start giving reasons, and because co-op board refusals are unreviewable in court, unless there's an improper reason. I did it. You were turning him down because of his race. That's a hypothetical. Nobody would say that, but on that hypothetical, you could be sued. Same thing here. Emil Bove should have simply. And by the way, my late father was Deputy Attorney General. Okay, I think you knew that, right?
Yes.
Arnold Burns. Yeah, in the Reagan administration, under Attorney General Ed Meese in the second Reagan term. But the point is, if it had been my dad, he would have simply directed the U.S. Attorney to drop the case. He would have given no reasons, no nothing. Here, Bove in the memo says, we're not saying the case isn't a good case. That was really stupid. Why do you need to get into that? We're saying that
politics.
Yeah, it's politics, and he has to run the city. And then came the dumbest thing of all. He says, we're going to have the new U.S. attorney review the case after the mayoral election. That was dumb because that did legitimately give off the impression that they were going to hold the case over his head, if he's a good boy and cooperates with ICE enforcement. He's supposed to do that anyway, so it's not a big deal. But again, it was Beauvais, who's a good lawyer, you're right, but he should have just directed him to dismiss it and call it a day. But by the way, filling out the analysis, the judge has absolutely nowhere to go with this. The judge knows it, okay? You cannot, seventh grade social studies, you cannot direct from the judicial branch prosecutors to bring or not bring a case. That's not your role. A judge can inquire as to whether there might have been some impropriety. That's what he's pretending to be doing here. But again, there's nowhere he can go with this. He cannot force them to do the case, and the case will be dismissed. And the other quick point is that Emmett Sullivan did the exact same thing in the Michael Flynn case. I don't know if you remember that. He appointed an independent lawyer to look at it and all this nonsense, and of course he ultimately dismissed it. And that's exactly what's going to happen in the Adams case.
Wow, really good. Yeah, so all those points I didn't know, and I think you got into the legal weeds a little bit on the technicality of it.
Yeah,
but the bottom line remains the same, that it was the right thing to do, which I was a little concerned about because not that I'm hoping
no, I mean,
something
again,
bad happens, but I think if the guy's guilty, you do what you got to do.
Yeah, but one final editorial, which is that these are really brilliant scams, as it were, because you need to be an expert in criminal law, honestly, to see through a lot of what's going on. So the point is, the Adams case, you can gussy it up and bells and whistles and, this many counts and all of this stuff. But the reality is it really was a very, very weak case. It was essentially brought, and these aren't like right-wing talking points or anything like that. It's legal analysis. It was essentially brought because he criticized the Biden administration.
Right. It seems like
and that's
what
why
they did to
the
Trump,
case.
Right? Same thing. You
You
take these non-crimes, you make it into a crime, and you make multiple
and it's the
counts.
same lawfare, exactly, and you make it sound criminal, and it's not that hard to do. And as my late dad, back to him, would say, Doug, you could lock up every single person in America on what you're charging Eric Adams with, basically.
Wow. Really well put. Doug Burns, always a pleasure. Thanks for stopping by. I'll be checking in with you again relatively soon. It seems like there's going to be a lot more legal stuff to discuss, and I appreciate your time, brother.
Appreciate you having me on, Rich. Great to talk to you.
Anytime. See you soon. And amigos, your calls and more coming up. And what's going on with this media shakeup? Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with you all, the American people. But first, I want to have a quick look at what Joy Reid had to say because she did her final episode. She's been canceled by MSNBC for her evening program, The Readout, and she got emotional.
My show had value and that, I'm sorry. That what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And this is kind of like being on TV, so I apologize. And then it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And so what I will just say is that in the end, thank you. Where I land is that the moment of guilt that I felt that I went hard on so many issues, whether it was the Black Lives Matter issues of a young baby or a mom or a dad that was killed, or when we opened up people's eyes to the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted and not just Black folks, or went hard for immigrants who've done nothing but come to this country like my parents did and try to make a life and defended them. Or whether we've talked about...
I'm going to pause it right here for a second, because the idea that someone's parents came here, the idea that she's somehow not on her show because of her family background has nothing to do with anything, right? I'm not trying to minimize anything. That would be like me coming on here and saying, listen, it was great. My parents came here from Puerto Rico. That's a really nice story, but it has nothing to do with why I'm not here. The reason she's not here is because she didn't provide value to the employer. The listener or the viewer was no longer interested. And that's really it. She went off on all of these tangential angles that had little value to the majority of the people. Go ahead.
What the president is doing that is subversive to the Constitution, that is injurious to our liberty, defending books that
hold on
people
a second.
find...
Now, let me ask you something, Joy Reid. Do you feel that when you say that white people are somehow the enemy, that somehow Donald Trump is reminiscent of Hitler, that is not injurious to the body politic or to the national discourse? Of course it is. But that never stopped you. Go ahead.
Inconvenient, that Nicole Hannah-Jones put into our spirit, that we need to understand 1619 as the real founding of this country, whether it's talking about any of these issues. And yes, whether it's talking about Gaza and the fact that we as the American people have a right to object, to little babies being bombed. And where I come down on that is I'm not sorry. I am not sorry that I stood up for those things, because those things are of God. And I'm a church girl too, and those are the things that I was taught were of God. And so I'm not sorry. I'm just proud of my show.
Well, thank you, Joy Reid, for sharing that with us. Listen, I would never apologize for the things that are of God either. And you don't have to apologize for having an opinion, whether it matches mine or not. I think there's no need for an apology, period. Ultimately, what happens here is you didn't provide what they were looking for. There was some talk about you leaving at least 6 months or a year ago, and I guess you didn't make the necessary adjustment to engage more viewers. Instead, it seemed like you doubled down with these wild monologues, constantly attacking white people, constantly attacking the Trump administration, honestly, attacking almost all Americans that support Donald Trump. And this is not a winning recipe. More after this. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Again, your calls and more, 833-482-5337. But first, Lester Holt. Lester Holt is also stepping down from his responsibilities as an anchor at NBC Nightly News. Holt says, a smile comes to my face when I think that with the Nightly News and Dateline, I've now anchored two of the most successful and iconic television programs in broadcast history. There you go. Lester Holt is out. Alex Wagner's out. Joy Reid is out. NBC is shaking things up. They should probably check out some of their friends at Telemundo, which is NBC property nowadays. Anyway, folks, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. If you're sticking around, there's more to come. If not, I'll check you on the next side. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. We are live, we're national, and our phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ. And I'm hoping to speak with you guys on open phones across America. But first, I want to get into what's going on in the news of the day. Of course, my buddy Dan Bongino has been appointed by Kash Patel and supported by President Trump to be deputy director of the FBI. Kudos to Dan Bongino. He's a real patriot, and I honestly can't think of somebody that would be better for the job. So congratulations and Godspeed. And we also have Joy Reid. Joy Reid is out. She is out. Lester Holt is stepping down. Alex Wagner is out. Diaz Balart is out. Let me see. There was another one here. The only one that moved up was Jen Psaki. Let me see. Jonathan Capehart. Oh, boy. What are they going to do without him? Katie Fang. I don't even know who Katie Fang is. Jeez. I got to keep up to speed on my lefties. And Eamon Moyledine. I don't know how to say that. Axing weekend host Eamon Moyledine Capehart. I don't know. I only knew Capehart. He's from WAPO. Anyway, so looks like 4 people or 5 in total that are no longer going to be on MSNBC. And I don't say that with any zeal, with any delight, with any joy. As you guys well know, I play audio of Joy Reid all the time. You know who else I used to play audio of? Don Limon. Remember him? He's gone. I can barely find him to get good audio anymore. Right? So likely we won't have any good audio to make fun of Joy Reid about. And that's my loss, right? Our loss collectively. But I guess it's a step that MSNBC is taking to professionalize their organization, to make it more based on actual news as opposed to opinion, or at least mixing news with opinion in a way that's a little bit more palatable to the consumer, right? For example, Jen Psaki or Kayleigh McEnany may deliver some opinion and analysis, but they're delivering it from the perspective of a former White House press secretary. And that's very different, I believe, because there's a particular context to it. There's a particular skill set that goes with it, right? Jen Psaki, she throws bombs, but they're not these racially motivated bombs that we've been hearing from the others, right? It's just hardcore lefty nonsense that I think viewers get tired of. So that's the shakeup there. Newsmax won the #1 most trusted news channel poll at CPAC over the weekend. So congrats to Chris Ruddy and the Newsmax team. And I totally neglected to talk about this, but while I was at CPAC, correspondent Mike Carter, national correspondent, came over to me and he said, "Hey, can we get your reaction to National Security Advisor Mike Waltz just announcing from the CPAC stage that Ukraine will take the deal in short time?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to, but I happen to be standing next to and having a conversation with the former deputy representative to NATO, General Blaine Holt, who we saw at CPAC, and he did the commentary on Newsmax instead of me." And I bring that up because this is the big story. Right? Zelensky says, "I will sign the deal." He has capitulated to Trump. Now, he's going to try and angle for Trump to negotiate for him to get him into NATO. I don't believe that will happen based on the opinion of, most of the people I've spoken with that are familiar with this stuff, including General Blaine Holt. But I think that they will come up with some sort of deal. And in the end, El Trumpito is looking to, frog in the throat there. President Trump is looking to capitalize on money that we lost. Money that was expended, that now they're debating whether it was a grant or not. Now, I know President Zelensky doesn't want to pay back this money. Who'd want to pay back $300 billion? I know I wouldn't. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't have borrowed it in the first place. But he did. And Trump is saying, no, we're going to get the money back. And we're going to get it by cutting us in as a half partner, 50% partner on your mineral rights. And this is something that China does in a lot of places. And I don't think they cut people in half unless they have to. I think they try to take all the mineral rights for themselves and pay like a rental fee or whatever that doesn't even equal what they're making in cobalt and lithium and whatever. But long story short is, it looks like this war is really coming to an end. And we're going to keep you up to speed on that as things develop. There was also the nomination of Alice Johnson as the pardon czar. Again, for the media that likes to say Trump is this and Trump is that, this is the first pardon czar, black woman, ex-con. Right? How about that? And Vivek Ramaswamy has announced officially for Ohio governor. Check this out.
President Trump is reviving our conviction in America. We require a leader here at home who will revive our conviction in Ohio. And that is why today I am honored to announce that I am running to be the next governor of a great state at the heart of the greatest nation known to mankind, the state where I was born and raised, the state where Apurva and I raise our two sons today, a state whose best days are still ahead. I am honored to announce my candidacy to serve as the next governor of the state of Ohio.
That, of course, Vivek Ramaswamy making his announcement for governor of Ohio. And before he was going to be governor of Ohio, he was going to be the co-chair of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, along with Elon Musk. And they were going to include Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick went on to serve as Secretary of Commerce. Of course, Musk is now chairing DOGE, and Ramaswamy is now, as you just heard, running for governor in Ohio. So I want to talk about DOGE, and kudos to Vivek. I think he's going to do a really good job there. But DOGE, President Trump, Elon Musk, the DOGE team are out there asking people who don't show up to work every day, are you showing up to work? Are you there? They're sending out letters. And this is a good thing. So I want to talk about DOGE. I want to talk about the mineral deal. I want to talk about what a DOGE dividend would look like. Would that go through the Sovereign Wealth Fund? Would it not? I don't know the answers to all of those things, but I do know that we're going to get to the bottom of that with my buddy E.J. Antoni in a little bit. But I always like to make a reminder to everyone here, everyone listening. Any day now, you never know what crazy left-wing billionaire might try to do a hostile takeover of a radio company in order to promote their own agenda. Now, I have faith in the FCC and Chairman Brendan Carr, who's been on this program, and President Trump. He's fighting hard for Americans. But you never know, right? And this is why I want to remind everybody. You've got to make sure you can keep tuning into this program and every other program that you like on talk radio. So if you love talk radio, podcasts, and news, you need one of these little radios. Now, these things are fantastic, and I highly recommend it. I recommend getting two, one for yourself and one to give away. It's called the C. Crane Radio 3. This thing delivers exceptional spoken word audio. You can hear the words clearly. No static, no fading. The clarity feels like me, your favorite host, is right there in the room, and it separates the bass and treble with separate controls so you can make it sound exactly like you like it. The CC Radio 3, this pulls in long-range AM, FM stations with extraordinary clear reception. You're talking about emergency features like NOAA weather and a 2-meter ham band. Just imagine that. So when the proverbial substance hits the fan, you've got a 2-meter ham band, and you can hear AM and FM radio stations from all across the country because it runs on the included power cord or a set of batteries for over, guess how long? 170 hours. This thing is reliable no matter where you are. The CC Radio 3 is almost what we can call an everything radio, right? You listen to your favorite radio station. You can connect via Bluetooth. You can stream whatever you want. You've got this immense palette of content from any smartphone or smart speaker. So what are you waiting for? To order one of these, you got to call C. Crane. And remember, if you have a problem, they have U.S.-based customer service. Give them a call, 800-522-8863, or visit ccrane.com/rich. That's ccrane.com/rich. Now, use code RICH, R-I-C-H, when you go to the checkout, and you'll get 10% off any order that's over $75. Do that now. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
In an ultimatum posted on X, Elon Musk demanded federal employees write down what they accomplished last week, adding failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. The government's Office of Personnel Management said in a statement individual agencies will determine the next steps, with no mention of resignations. This weekend, President Trump urged Elon Musk to get more aggressive to slash spending.
And Elon is doing a great job. We love Elon.
But not every agency is following through on Musk's demand. FBI Director Kash Patel is among those pushing back, saying in an email obtained by CBS News that the Bureau will conduct reviews, adding when and if further information is required, we will coordinate the responses. Trump appointees at several other agencies, including the State Department and Department of Defense, are telling employees to disregard the email. The ultimatum is the latest confusion for federal workers who are already grappling with the Trump administration's aggressive efforts to shrink the workforce.
We're removing all of the unnecessary, incompetent, and corrupt bureaucrats from the federal workforce.
Removing unnecessary and incompetent elements of the workforce, which ultimately becomes savings, I think, to the federal government. But I want to get into the economics of this with our resident economist, E.J. Antoni from the Heritage Foundation. Welcome back, sir.
Rich, it is always a pleasure. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always, I love having you. I love talking to you. I love your approach to this stuff. It's not always the easiest thing to talk about at 10 o'clock at night, right? But you keep people awake, and that's a good thing. It's a skill in of itself. So let's dig into this because I always approach things from the political perspective, but I think we need to get the nuts and bolts of it. We've got DOGE, and there's been a lot of talk. I want to tackle a couple of things here, right? Number one is there's the procedural stuff that's happening. They're sending out letters. They want to see who's at work. But ultimately, from what you've been able to gather, how much money is being saved? How much of a trim on our deficit are we seeing thus far?
Well, in terms of savings, it's already in the billions of dollars. Now, people say, okay, well, that doesn't matter because the deficit's $2 trillion a year. Okay, I get that. But look, you got to start somewhere. People were saying back in the Obama years, for example, when hydraulic fracturing first became a mainstream technology in the oil and gas industry, folks were saying, oh, why bother to start this stuff today? You're going to drill a well. It's not actually going to bring any product to market for 5 years, right? So it's not going to have any impact on gas prices today. Why bother? Well, by that mentality, we wouldn't have the massive levels of production that we have achieved since then, chiefly because of all that increase in hydraulic fracturing and the horizontal drilling methods, right? So you have to start somewhere. And what's amazing, Rich, is that the further the DOGE boys go, the more corruption, the more abuse, fraud, waste that they keep finding. I just saw a report today. They just uncovered a man in Louisiana who had over 30 different names and addresses he was using to collect Social Security.
Wow.
The guy was getting over $1.2 million a year just from the Social Security program and all of that fraud. So again, every time these guys turn over another rock, they find more waste of taxpayer dollars.
AJ Antoni, this is the type of thing I think that Americans, doesn't matter, right? It's one of those issues where it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. I think most people, except for the hyper-partisans, they really, they don't like it. Nobody wants to hear that we're spending money the way we are, and worse, that there might be fraud and abuse behind it, where like this guy that you just mentioned, that's, collecting multiple Social Security checks, and that's just one guy. I wonder who else is pulling off a scam like that. So with this type of approach, that I don't think I've seen it this granular before, or at least with this gutsy of an approach where you've got senators that are coming out in opposition to it. Do you suspect that they'll be able to hit their goal of $2 trillion in savings?
I do, Rich, and I can't understand for the life of me. You mentioned these senators who are coming out in opposition. Look, it was not that long ago that Bill Clinton, a Democrat, declared the era of big government is over, right? I mean, the Democrat Party of today is just nothing like what it was even under Bill Clinton, let alone JFK. But we should also add, this isn't strictly a Republican-Democrat issue. There is plenty of fraud. There's plenty of grift and corruption on the right as well, people who call themselves Republicans. Hence, there's that whole category that they call rhinos, Republican in name only. So, if we look at the last election, Rich, I think it was pretty clear, given how well Trump did compared to a lot of down ballot races, this was not so much a Republican sweep as it was a Trump sweep, right? We did not see the Republican Party overall perform nearly as well as President Trump did in both the popular vote and all the swing states.
Wow. EJ Antoni, hold that thought. We're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to add to it the DOGE dividend. Will that be part of the sovereign wealth fund? Will we get half of Ukraine's natural resources? And how are people going to get this? Plus, inflation, how does that fit in? Folks, are coming right back with EJ Antoni. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez live with you till midnight, 1 a.m. in some areas across the country. Happy to be with you. And we continue our conversation with our in-house resident economist, EJ Antoni from the Heritage Foundation. And EJ, we have President Trump sitting with Elon Musk on Thursday in the Oval Office talking about how DOGE will help lower interest rates and lower inflation, which some thought was kind of problematic. Listen to this.
Yes, the reason the interest payments are so high is because the national debt keeps increasing. So the government is competing to sell debt with the private citizens. This drives up the interest rate. So if you cut back on the deficit, you actually have an amazing situation for people because you get rid of inflation and you drop the interest rates. And that means people's mortgage payments go down, their credit card payments go down, their car payments go down, their student loans go down, everything, their life becomes more affordable.
Their life becomes more affordable. Man, that sounds really good. Amen. Praise God. Hallelujah. Now, EJ Antoni, the question that I think a lot of people were asking was, how do we attack inflation by lowering interest rates? And again, Musk talks about taking a huge whack at the deficit, which I understand to mean that if we shrink government, that actually will help boost growth and alleviate some of the long-term inflation. But I don't know if I'm right or wrong. What say you?
Oh, no, Rich, I think you're definitely onto something here. Look, what Elon is basically articulating very well, frankly, is that the interest rate is simply a price. We don't think of it this way, but it's a price. It's the price to borrow money. And if you increase the demand for something, what happens? Well, you put upward pressure on the price. That's just Econ 101. So
sure.
If the government is going to Right, exactly. So if the government is going to borrow $2 trillion a year, that's a tremendous increase in the demand for borrowed money. Well, that means you're going to put upward pressure on the price to borrow money, which is the interest rate. So that's why we're seeing such persistently high interest rates. Now, I mean, if you want to go back 100 years, right, for a very long time, these interest rates were not that high. The problem is we've just gotten used to, over the last 20 or 30 years, artificially low interest rates. So when we talk about today, how do we get interest rates down? Well, if the Fed just artificially lowers interest rates like they tried to do, what's going to happen? You're going to get more inflation again. So if you really want actual interest rates to come down and you want the inflation rate to come down, the government has to spend less money. This is why, despite President Trump taking a lot of great actions in his first few weeks of office, the inflation rate really has not come down yet. It's because it's going to take a long time for those policies to have their effect, and that includes getting the government spending down. He just got handed the worst start ever to a fiscal year. October, November, December, and January. This was the worst 4-month start ever to a fiscal year in terms of the deficit. That's not an exaggeration. And we should also remember, despite Biden, when he came into office, starting a whole host of bad policies, whether it was the anti-energy agenda, like killing the Keystone XL pipeline, or signing multi-trillion-dollar spending bills, he did all of those things right away in his first few days in office. But the inflation rate under Biden didn't even peak until 18 months later. So it is definitely going to take time for these different spending cuts, for example, to have a positive effect on both inflation and interest rates.
It's a lot. That's a lot. But ultimately, you're in agreement. If we can knock off some of the deficit, this will ease inflationary pressure, and ultimately we can actually see interest rates go down because there wouldn't be so much upward pressure that you're talking about.
Exactly, Rich, 100%. And so this is where, going back to what we started with DOGE, yes, these are small cuts to start with, but look, you have to start somewhere. And we've been trying literally for decades to make these cuts from 30,000 feet. But the problem is nobody can agree on cutting out programs like that. So that's why you need a team of specialists like we have now with DOGE to go in there really with a scalpel at a very, as you said, Rich, a granular level, and find all of these instances of abuse, of fraud, of waste, and just cut everything out. And more importantly, I think, make the public aware of just how bad these things are, because that is really the only way you're going to build popular support for reform in the budget, is if you expose things like what we mentioned earlier with the guy getting 34 different Social Security checks.
Yeah, or the 200-year-olds that are eligible to collect Social Security.
Right, exactly.
That stuff is insane. Now, EJ Antoni, I want you're scheduled to be with me for a little bit, but are you able to stay for a few more minutes? Because I want to talk about the DOGE dividend.
Oh, I'd be happy to.
I love that. All right, folks, we're going to come right back and we're going to talk about this DOGE dividend and whether it's inflationary or not. Is it a preemptive tax return, or is it a stimulus check that's going to cost us money that we have to print? We're going to find out when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with E.J. Antoni, our resident economist. He's from the Heritage Foundation. And E.J. Antoni, Kevin Hassard, he's the chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. He says that the DOGE dividend checks are absolutely not inflationary. Listen to this.
Oh, absolutely not, because imagine if we don't spend government money and we give it back to people, then if they spend it all, then you're even. But they're probably going to save a lot of it, in which case you're reducing inflation. Okay, so and also, when the government spends a lot, that's what creates inflation. We learned that from Joe Biden. And so if we reduce government spending, then that's reduces inflation. And if you give people money, then they're going to save a bunch of it. And when they save it, then that also reduces demand and reduces inflation.
Okay, so you're not worried about it.
All right, so he's not worried about it. I want to know, are you worried about it, E.J. Antoni?
No, for three reasons, some of which Mr. Hassard just articulated there. This is money that the government was going to spend anyway, Rich, and so you're just simply changing who is spending the money. Is the government spending it, or is the private sector spending it? That's in stark contrast to when Joe Biden was sending out checks to people. That was money that wasn't going to be spent. It wasn't going to be created by the Fed, but it was because of those different government spending bills. So there's that point. The other thing is that when the people spend money, they are spending money on themselves, and so they're much more careful about how they spend their money. It results in a much more efficient allocation of resources. All of those things, increases in efficiency means you're putting downward pressure on prices. On top of that, Hassett just said that some people are going to save the money. That's true, but you know what else some people are going to do with it? They're going to pay down. Well, that's true too, but some of it is not so much savings in terms of it's going in the bank. It's savings in terms of it's being used to pay down debt. Well, when that happens, you actually contract the money supply. People don't realize that when we take on debt, that increases the money supply, because in our economy, debt is money. And so if you pay down debt, it does the opposite. It extinguishes money, which again helps reduce inflation. So there's a myriad of reasons here why this is actually not inflationary at all. In fact, it may even result in lower prices.
Outstanding. Now, I want to get your take on this. So would this be similar to the checks that were issued during COVID, or would this be like an advance on a tax refund since it's one's own tax dollars, presumably?
This sounds more like it would basically work as a tax rebate, if you will. So if you have a tax liability of, let's say, $15,000, and then this is a $5,000 credit, essentially. So it reduces your tax liability down to $10,000. And part of me says, look, we should just be using this money to reduce the deficit or to pay down the debt. But part of me also says, all right, is there a political reality here where we need people to understand, look, this is what you voted for, and we are delivering on our promises to you. And so I don't know if you want to give all these savings out in terms of some kind of tax refund, or if you maybe want to say 50 cents on the dollar goes to checks and the other 50 cents goes to paying down the debt and the deficit. whatever the case may be. But I think it's certainly a really good conversation to have. And the fact that we can even talk about sending money back to the taxpayer because we're saving so much through DOGE, I think that's a great place to be in.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, EJ Antoni, I want to talk about this dividend idea because again, I hear lots of things through the grapevine, as I'm sure do you, and I want to compare notes with you. So I'm hearing things like the United States is about to enter into a 50-50 partnership with Ukraine on their natural resources, and this is worth about $500 billion to us. This $500 billion would come back and help pay down the deficit and all this stuff, but some portion, if not all, would go into the proposed sovereign wealth fund, which would then issue dividends to the taxpayers. Are you hearing this, and is this feasible? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's certainly feasible, but I would have to imagine that the initial payments, these initial dividends out of something like a sovereign wealth fund would essentially go to reducing people's tax liability. Because let's not forget, we're still running a huge deficit, and we still have this massive debt of well over $30 trillion. And so if you're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, you really need to clear out that debt. In other words, the sovereign wealth fund at first will probably function as a way to help pay down that debt. It will be a way to have investments that generate revenue that provide a supplement to tax receipts. So again, more money coming into the Treasury, combine that with less money going out, and that's where you get that positive cash flow, or I guess you would say it's the equivalent of a positive cash flow, right, for a business, and the business starts paying down its debt in the same way the government would start paying down its debt. It's going to take a long time, but eventually you get to a point where you clear the debt, and now you just start building an asset for the American people. And increasingly, that revenue can replace more and more tax receipts.
Now, if we replace tax receipts, then theoretically, the idea is there's less of a reliance on my tax dollars and yours tax dollars, right?
Exactly, 100%. And I think, Rich, this is probably part of a broader push to get rid of the income tax, which again, yes. I'm so glad we're even having this conversation. It's incredible.
And it's a real one. It's not a pie in the sky one.
Exactly. People are starting to remember that, during America's golden age, which is when we had our fastest sustained levels of economic growth, the income tax didn't even exist. The Supreme Court had ruled it unconstitutional outside of it being an emergency wartime measure from the Civil War era. So we didn't have an income tax. The federal government funded itself almost entirely with tariffs. It didn't crash the economy. Again, we had our fastest levels of sustained economic growth. It didn't cause runaway inflation. In fact, prices over time slightly declined by a fraction of a percentage point per year. So all of the economic ills that are being associated today with tariffs, the record of history shows that if those tariffs are implemented properly, none of those bad problems will actually rear their ugly heads.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I never lose sight of history. I get weary or nervous about tariffs when we look at not the tariffs of that time, but more so tariffs now, which end up triggering trade wars and increasing the price of different products. And I think Trump has been extraordinarily strategic in applying those tariffs. And half the time we don't even have to apply them because he's able to get what he needs, and it's to the benefit of the country. But I think that's where the apprehension comes from.
Yeah, Rich, it's a great point. Tariffs can be done very well like they were under McKinley. They can be done very poorly like they were under Hoover. And yeah. I think you brought up such a key point there, which is Trump is doing this strategically. Compare that to Hoover, where it was this almost bizarre shotgun approach to tariff policy. It made no sense. It wasn't even much of a policy at all. It had an almost randomness to it, and it was done during a time when the United States had virtually no leverage on the countries which were being tariffed. Today, right. Trump is trying to do exactly the opposite.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point. It makes you think if whether Hoover was there, kind of like Biden, here to destroy the border, was Hoover there to destroy the tariffs? Who knows? Because You look back at history through those lenses and you say, what possibly could have driven these people to make some of these choices? Anyway, EJ Antoni, this is very good stuff here. I'm out of time here, but you answered a ton of questions for us. Like always, everybody now has an honorary PhD in economics, courtesy of Dr. EJ Antoni. And let everybody know how to find you if they want to continue to hear some of your invaluable wisdom.
Oh, the best place to find me is going to be on X, and the handle there is @RealEJAntoni. Look for the blue check mark so you don't follow one of those crypto scammers out there.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I've seen that happen before. Folks, follow him at @RealEJAntoni. He's one of the best in the game and definitely our resident economist here, Rich Valdez, America at Night. EJ Antoni, I want to thank you for being here, and I'll be calling on you again real soon because this stuff's moving fast.
I'll look forward to chatting again, Rich. Thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, brother. Thank you. And amigos, your call is coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, to the phones we go. Open phones across America. Let's go to Jane, Saratoga, New York, WGDJ. Go right ahead quickly.
Hey, Rich. Okay, quickly. All right. First of all, we have Trump, and that makes our world a better place. He focuses on quality, and he's smart. He and Musk, they care. They care about their country. They care about the family. And we, I think, are heading in a good direction, and people just need to listen and
I
pay
think you're
attention.
right. They got to pay attention. They've got to listen and ask the questions, right? That's what we're doing with EJ Antoni right now and with you all, the American people, because this is a very unconventional way of doing things, right? This idea of a sovereign wealth fund where the people can get a dividend back is a very interesting thing. Even this DOGE dividend, which is not part of the sovereign wealth fund, also very, very interesting and non-conventional. So stay tuned. Jane, thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate it. Lance, Kalispell, Montana, KOFI. Lance, go right ahead quickly.
Yes, good evening, sir. Hey, long time no speak.
Yes, sir. Good to hear from you.
Given Mr. Bongino's appointment to Deputy Secretary and him trying to fill the size 13 boots that Mr. Limbaugh left behind, I just wanted to ask your opinion on who you might think should be best suited to fill that slot now to continue to bring forth the same knowledge.
I'm thinking of a guy named Lance in Kalispell, Montana, as probably my top choice. But what I really think, if I had to analyze this, I would say that whenever you have an opening like that, and this is, I believe, a temporary one. I can't see Dan being gone for more than a year. I don't think he's a 4-year guy. Maybe I'm wrong, right? But I think he's there to do a job. But even if that's the case, I think he'll eventually come back to broadcasting. And I would say you'll probably see a rotating lineup of guest hosts. Jim Verde, his producer, is a great guest host. So we'll see. Too early to tell. But Lance, thank you. Great question. Amigos, hasta la próxima. That means until the next time en español. I'm Rich Valdez. Take care. Good night. And God bless.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you this Monday night. It's about 7 minutes after 11 p.m. We're live, we're national, and let me give you the phone number if you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to get into a bunch of things because we've got Ilhan Omar saying that the dumbing of America has arrived, saying that it's the dumb idiots in America that voted for Donald Trump. We'll get to that momentarily. Joy Reid has been canceled from her show, as well as a handful of others from MSNBC and NBC News. We'll get into that. We also have some really interesting news coming out of the Congo. It was reported, honestly, I think on Thursday, late Thursday, I saw this. I wanted to use it on Friday, but got tied up with CPAC, and I did not get it into the show. And I wanted to make sure I had enough time to talk about it, at least to give you my thoughts on everything. And it is a tragic, brutal story of ISIS-related terrorists. I believe they're known as the AFD or the ADF. And these Islamist militants kidnapped 70 followers of Christ, Christians in the Democratic Republic of Congo, brought them to a church, and then assassinated each and every one of them by cutting off their heads. Listen to this.
Just this week, 70 Christian men and women in the Congo were kidnapped. They were kidnapped and taken to a church where they were beheaded. The Christians were reportedly taken hostage and then murdered by an Islamist group called ADF, which is an affiliate of ISIS. This is news that is not being reported by the mainstream media. Not a lot of people are paying attention to this, but Christian persecution is at an all-time high. I grieve for these brothers and sisters in Christ who were lost, and I think it's essential for those of us in the West who don't experience anything close to that kind of persecution for us to pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters and to call for an end to the persecution of Christians.
That's a social media post in reaction to what's going on from Lila Rose from Live Action. Kudos to her for putting that out there as quickly as she did. And this is not the first time I've heard of this. You know, I've heard of this type of thing happening. Christianity has been persecuted for a long time. Matter of fact, those who aren't very familiar, Christ himself was persecuted and put to death on a crucifix, right, or on a cross, which is why we have crucifixes today. And this idea is not new, but it is somewhat surprising every now and again when you hear about it happening in the modern day. And it's sad, but it opens up your eyes. And the number one question I think most people have is why? Why would this be happening? Well, Dexter Van Zyl, he's the managing editor of Middle East Forum on CBN News, gives a take on that. Listen to this.
70 Christians have been found beheaded. Yes, beheaded in a church in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why is no one reporting this? Why does no one seem to care? Well, let me bring in Dexter Van Zyl, an expert on anti-Christian violence.
Now, I just wanted to put that out there as a tease. We're going to get to that a little bit after the bottom of the hour. And again, your thoughts on that. But why is this not getting more media attention? I think, Fox News just reported on the story over the weekend when it was already a couple of days old. This was stuff that I had only seen on social media. And it's disheartening. To say the least, it's disheartening. But that is a reality of what's going on. And it seems whether it's persecution politically or persecution physically up to and including death, many don't blink an eye when the persecution is against Christians. So we'll talk about that a little bit more down the road. I also want to talk about a very bold move by Governor DeSantis to eliminate property taxes in the state of Florida. Listen to this.
And, these property taxes, it's like you buy a home, you buy land, maybe you buy the home outright, but maybe you pay off a mortgage over 30 years. And then, okay, you've paid off the mortgage, you bought the land, you've been taxed many times. It's like is it your property or not? Just for being on your property, you got to write a check to the government every year. So you're basically paying rent to the government to live on your own property. And our homestead exemption is not strong enough to help these folks because the property gets assessed so high. And that's the thing. If you buy a home for $300,000 and you know there's certain tax, well, then what? 10 years later, they say it's worth $700,000. And so, and they say, there's homestead stuff that helps protect you to a certain extent, but you're paying more. And a lot of people can't afford that.
A lot of people can't afford that. And this is why I think it's so important to have these conversations about tax, right? Taxation without representation is theft. And I believe that. I really do. I realize that we've kind of gotten away from that mantra. And I'd like to bring it back, right? A little bit of a throwback that we're bringing back. I want to bring it back into style to not pay income tax. And ideally, I'd like to pay very little tax on everything. You know me. Give me a horse and buggy and a dirt road and a shotgun. And let's call it a day. Now, not everybody has to be that radical with a gravel road or a dirt road. But still, less government is better. Less is more. Now, DeSantis, I give him a lot of kudos for that, but he's taken some heat from Matt Gaetz and others online who are criticizing his response to whether he will support Byron Donalds for governor of the state of Florida. Listen to this.
Trump endorsed Byron Donalds in the 2026 governor's race. Do you also plan to endorse the congressman? And if not, who are you looking at and why?
My view is Donald Trump just got into office. I want these congressmen focused on enacting his agenda. They haven't done very much yet. They're not putting his executive orders into place. We'll see what they do on the spending. But we have such a narrow majority that to be trying to campaign other places and missing these votes, I think is not something that's advisable at all. And so the reality is we've achieved victories in Florida. We need to start achieving those victories up there. So I think people look at it and say, you got a guy like Byron, he just hasn't been a part of any of the victories that we've had here over the left over these last years. He's just not been a part of it. He's been in other states campaigning. Shots
fired. Right. Man, what was that all about? I don't know. And there's more to that clip. I'm going to stop it right there because, you've heard it, right? He said, I don't know that Byron's been part of any of this. I think it's clear that Byron Donalds was on the campaign for Donald Trump. He was very, very effective on the campaign trail. He remains to be very effective for the administration, at least from the perspective of being out there and promoting the agenda publicly, winning public support. And again, I'm not a Floridian, although I'd love to be. I'd love to have a 2-story loft apartment in penthouse, preferably in Brickell in Miami. I would love that. That's probably my next move. But all that aside, I'm not a resident of Florida, and I'm not going to split hairs here, but I think this wasn't the most political answer, right? I think DeSantis could have come up with something like, well, we're looking at a lot of people running. We're looking at, there's a lot of ways he could have not given that response, but he decided to give that response. That response, which is it was a sharp retort. It was very, very pointed in terms of, offering his critique of Congressman Donalds, who I'm a fan of. And again, I just think, what does DeSantis have to lose here? He's on his way out. He's been reelected twice. What's the big whoop? He's term limited. It would be a good idea. I guess maybe he sees him as a potential future rival for the presidency. I don't know. Maybe he has somebody else in mind. Some are saying that his wife might run. I don't know. I haven't heard all of that. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think Byron Donalds is a fantastic candidate and should definitely, have gotten a little bit better of a reception, a little bit better response from the governor, don't you think? Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts. Your thoughts on the persecuted Christians, your thoughts on Byron Donalds running for governor of Florida and Ron DeSantis' response, as well as what do you think of Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, his proposal to eliminate property tax. I think that's a great presidential move. Whether I like what he did to Donald or not, I like what he's talking about when it comes to taxes. So your thoughts on all of that, 833-4825-337-8334 Valdez. And straight ahead, some discussion on what Apple is doing with respect to trafficking and children and so much more. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, you, of course, have a track record now. People have heard you, and they know that, in fact, you've got the goods. You have the talent, and you have the ability to do a superb job.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Apple has faced quite a bit of pressure from child safety advocates who say the company does not do enough to keep kids safe from sexual predators when they're online or using Apple devices. But the company is responding. They've announced a new feature that would allow kids to report when someone sent them an inappropriate text message.
Yeah, they are rolling out the new iMessage feature first in Australia before expanding around the world. Those reports go straight to Apple, who can then pass them along to police. This is in addition to a feature that detects if kids receive a sensitive image like a nude picture. They have to navigate past not one, but 2 intervention screens with resources on how to contact a parent or guardian. Users also have the option to report the content to Apple. That report includes the actual images or videos, the messages sent immediately before and after, and the contact information from both accounts.
So that is a report on Apple and what they're doing to protect kids. And my question is it enough? Is it too little, too late? It's only happening in Australia right now. So what's going on? Well, I want to get to the bottom of that with our guest. He's the CEO of AFA Action, American Family Association's advocacy arm. And Walker Wildmon is with us. Walker, welcome.
Hey, Rich, welcome. Thanks so much for having me on the program.
You bet. So what's going on here with Apple? Talk to us. Your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been American Family Association, and I've been engaging with Apple for the last really 2 years on this subject matter. And the basic subject matter is, what is Apple doing to protect minors on their devices? And there's really 2 areas that we focused on. The first one is the scanning for child sexual abuse material, otherwise known as CSAM, which is illegal content. It's the abuse of minors. The scanning of that content on Apple iCloud accounts. So, for example, if a child predator is uploading pornographic images of minors onto their iCloud account, Apple would scan for that and would notify law enforcement if they detect that material. And that's the first area of which Apple is not doing that. So one of Apple's executives actually admitted in an email thread that they're basically the largest website for child sexual abuse material. That was a quote from one of their executives in internal emails that were revealed through discovery in a lawsuit that's still pending. Also is what they do to protect teenagers on the iPhone devices. So in the Messages app, which a lot of people don't know this, but in the Messages app, teenagers age 13 to 17 can actually send pornographic content back and forth with their peers or with even an adult, theoretically, without that content being properly blocked. Now, Apple does block nude images for 12 and under, so minors, 12 and under children. But those teens 13 to 17, which are also legally classified as minors, they're able to view nude images without having to enter a password or without their parental consent. So there's just a lot of areas here that Apple can improve on. And so that's the point in us bringing this up.
Folks, we're on with Walker Wildmon, and we're talking about the importance of Apple taking additional measures to protect your kids, your grandkids, your neighbors' kids. those between the ages of 13 and 17 that are using Apple iPhone and other devices and could potentially be faced with CSAM, as it was just put by our guest, Walker Wildmon. And Walker, what is the approach? Are you suing them? Are you having negotiations with them? Are you just applying pressure externally? What is the involvement of your organization, American Family Association Action, and Apple?
Yeah. So what AFA is doing is we're utilizing our investments. So AFA owns several, $1 million in investments, and we own various shares of companies. So AFA actually owns shares of Apple because we think overall they're a good company and they provide good technology for their customers. So we're utilizing our ownership of Apple shares to engage with them at the annual shareholder meeting. And the way this works is shareholders are able to present proposals to be voted on by the entire shareholders once a year at the annual meeting. So we see this as a very important issue with Apple, that they can do so much more to protect minors from being victimized, that we decided to bring up this proposal at a shareholder meeting coming up this week. And what we're basically asking Apple to do is to conduct a review and a study of the implications of not doing more, the implications of not deploying CSAM scanning technology in iCloud. What are the ramifications here? What are the liability issues? How many people are going to be victimized for Apple failing to do more? So that's what we're asking the company to do, to basically conduct a risk assessment so that shareholders and the public, people who own the devices, they can know what all is going on here with Apple. But this is a very big deal, and it kind of goes behind the scenes. But the two things that I mentioned, the fact that Apple's technology is actually notoriously used by child predators, that's very concerning. And the fact that you have 13 to 17-year-olds that can view nude images without parental notification on their devices is very, very concerning, because I want to remind the audience that in various states around the country, it's illegal for minors to view pornography. Whether you like it or not, it is illegal according to all 50 states for minors, for children to view pornographic content.
Now, Walker,
so there's some legal questions there as well.
If people have a question about what you guys are doing, or if they want to support the work that you're doing, how do they learn more about your work with AFA Action?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, AFA Action's our governmental affairs affiliate, and that URL is just simply afaaction.net. We do all things public policy and government affairs. And then the parent ministry is American Family Association, afa.net.
Outstanding. Walker Wildmon, CEO of AFA Action and VP of Operations for American Family Association. Thanks for being here. Hope to hear from you again soon with an update. God bless.
Thanks so much.
You bet. Amigos, we're coming back. Your calls and more. 70 Christians persecuted. DeSantis, good on taxes, bad on Donald's. Your thoughts and more. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
After the guest leaves every night, we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio, and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America, all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
70 Christians have been found beheaded. Yes, beheaded in a church in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why is no one reporting this? Why does no one seem to care? Well, let me bring in Dexter Van Zyl, an expert on anti-Christian violence. Dexter, what can you tell us about this absolutely barbaric atrocity?
Okay, well, first of all, it took place in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is a huge country with about 105 million people, that right now is basically in a conflict with neighboring Rwanda over territory in Kivu. Okay? And the violence was perpetrated by an organization that was that is affiliated with ISIS. And the thing is that there are some people who have argued that they are essentially working on behalf of Rwanda, because Rwanda is a neighboring country that covets and is actually taking control of an awful lot of the mineral resources.
A lot of people fighting over mineral resources. This is the, I don't know, it's the new Bitcoin, right? Now, I don't mean to make light of this particular topic at hand, but trying to bring it to your attention. And, of course, I want to get your thoughts on this stuff. So if you've never called the show before and you have an opinion on persecuted Christians, feel free to give us a call, 833-4825-337-833-4-VALDEZ. But it is alarming. It's concerning. We've seen it over the years. I went to a synagogue, right? What they call a Messianic Christian or Messianic Jewish, I guess, synagogue in Wayne, New Jersey. The pastor, Jonathan Kahn, I actually had him on the show here a couple months ago. But this was, I don't know, at least about 15, 16 years ago, easily. And it was a very interesting experience. It was like a Christian megachurch, but it was done in the Jewish tradition. He goes by rabbi and wears a yarmulke and all of that. And the guest speaker, who was preaching not quite a sermon, but I guess you could say was a man from India whose entire family was firebombed. And it was all because they were from southern India, I think a state known as Kerala, where the majority of the people there are Christians. And they're proud of it. So their names are not like those in northern India that have more Hindu names. Their names are typically similar to those of the apostles, right? Their last name, like, so-and-so John or so-and-so Mark. And it was just a very interesting conversation or a sermon, I should say, that I was just blown away at how much grace he had towards the murderers of his wife and his daughter, and blown away by the brutality of it all. And now to hear 70 people were beheaded, not one or two or seven, and not that it makes it any better, but 70 people is a lot of people. It's like an airline, a small jet filled of people. Heads cut off inside of a church. This absolute barbaric behavior. So what's up with that, right? What is going on with the beheading of Christians? What is going on in the world? I want to get your thoughts on the phones, 833-4825-337-833-4-VALDEZ. We go to Boise, Idaho, checking in with our buddy Paul. Paul in Boise, go right ahead, sir. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much for taking my call. Disturbing comes to mind. Beyond disturbing, if there's a word.
Yeah.
When you're talking about probably some mutilation going on too, I would imagine. But what came to mind when you first started talking about it was when the Christians were fed to the lions in Rome. That was sport. They thought that was cute and fun to watch, and that went on for some time. And I can only imagine the horror that they had to live once they were trying to run out of the place and getting dragged back in there by 4 or 5 lions. But to be beheaded in a church, it's just kind of beyond the pale. It reminds me a little bit too close to October 7th. A couple years ago when the Jews got attacked, unprovoked, I might add, and were sprung into war, and then for some reason the the Palestinian people were rising against the Jews, trying to take the high road when they're the ones that instigated the whole thing to begin with, Hamas.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know that all of the Palestinian people are pro-Hamas. I think that's been a big source of debate. The Palestinians I know personally I've never seen them take the position for Hamas per se, but I have seen them take the position for the land of their family and against Israel, but not necessarily pro-Hamas. And I guess that's to be determined, right? But I can just tell you what I know. But you raise a very good point, Paul, that it is a brutal thing, and it's a disheartening thing to see this happening. And whether it's October 7th or whether it's what happened over the weekend with these 70 Christians that are beheaded, it seems like it's happening all too often that people are willing to end the lives of those that they disagree with religiously. And that is just disappointing, to say the least, Paul.
Yeah, where was it? Was it on the back page where you can't read it? Nobody's going to see it?
Honestly, I haven't seen a whole lot of it yet. Fox News reported on, I think, yesterday or Saturday. I think it happened last week. And I'd only seen reports from the Christian Broadcasting Network by Friday. And that's pretty much it. There really hasn't not been a lot of media coverage. And it's a shame, right? And I guess part of it is, I don't think it's a cover-up. I think it's that they're used to hearing these stories every now and again. Oh, yeah, they killed a whole village of Christians. Oh, yeah, it just becomes commonplace where we're like, yeah, it's part of the game. I mean, after all, your leader, your man, JC himself, Jesus Christ, he was killed quite publicly. And I get that. I think while it may be normal to expect that outcome, it should not be normalized. Yeah, I guess that's the point that I'm making. Paul in Boise, Idaho, thank you for your call. Shout out to KBOI and everybody listening. We got calls from Nebraska, South Carolina, Florida, and more. Keep it locked right here. It's Valdez. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with your calls and more open phones across America. I want to go to, we got a lot of people here. Let's go to Chris in Kearney, Nebraska, KRVN. Go right ahead, Chris.
Hey, I was listening earlier about reducing the deficit. One way would be to cut spending, but another way would be to increase revenue by possibly seeing who can afford more taxes, like billionaires.
All right. Point well taken. Although I don't know that we should be taxing billionaires more based on what they can afford. I think the idea of the income tax is sinful, honestly, and we should probably get rid of it altogether. And I think that's part of what, a lot of people are pushing for. And the idea is hopefully to figure out a way to maintain revenues without taking them out of anybody's pockets, including the billionaires, who I don't think should be punished for their success. Chris in Kearney, Nebraska, KRVN. Thank you, sir. Let's see. We go to Joseph. Joseph is in Clarinda, Iowa, KMA. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. Rich Valdez, it's an honor to talk to you here on the channel. And I think you're wonderful. I've been listening.
Likewise,
for many
thank
years.
you. Joseph, I want to ask you to lower your radio or TV because we're getting some feedback. It's hard to hear you.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. We've got like 2 channels coming on right here in Corinda.
Awesome.
We got this channel coming on right now, and then we got another channel that's on tonight, which is Richard Valdez on KMA.
Nice. You get a little. So nice. We get to do it twice. Anyway, tell me what's on your mind tonight.
That's awesome. That's what we need. But anyway, I don't know what the main culprit things are tonight, but I was just wanting to put out there that I am a Trump supporter. I voted Trump twice, and then this time I voted, and I'm just thinking sometimes I just feel like that my vote don't matter sometimes. Every time he puts an executive order out there, it seems like they block it. And now they're blocking even Elon Musk. I mean, for crying out loud.
Well, take heart and rest assured that the majority of these executive orders are going through, even though they're getting sued. He keeps winning in court. They tried to stop him on the women and men and women's sports. I think that one didn't fly. He won on that one. He's winning on the DOGE constantly. I think he's had 7 or 8 victories so far. And there was another one. Oh, on the firing of the employees, which I guess counts under DOGE. But firing everybody at USAID, he won that one on Friday afternoon. So there's a lot of victories there. Nothing is going to come without a hard-fought battle, right? Anything worth having is worth working hard for. And I think Trump is proving that day in and day out as he's, trying to run the country and overhaul the country and bring us in a new direction. So I'm encouraged by everything that I'm seeing. Quite frankly, Joseph, it looks like a well-oiled machine that's on track to do a good thing, but it's not easy. It's a heavy lift, and there's a struggle that goes along with the heavy lift, but along with the good heavy lift, there's the payoff of becoming that much stronger. So I think we're in good shape. So don't be too beat up about it. And listen, you never know. We might see some real tax reprieves coming up. Maybe even, call me crazy, by the end of this term, we might even see a whole lot less income tax. And that is music to my ears. Joseph in Clarinda, Iowa, KMA, and the other station as well. Godspeed to you, sir. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. And let me see. I think I pause here, and then we come back and go to Rochester, Minnesota, Charleston, South Carolina, and more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You have this new freshman congressional representative, this lawmaker Brandon Gill, Republican, who tweeted out that video of you and wrote, "America would be a better place if Ilhan Omar were deported back to Somalia." I mean, I thought I'd seen everything. And I've seen a lot of attacks on you. But now you have a Republican colleague, dare I say, in the House saying to deport an American citizen, an American lawmaker, an elected representative. How do you deal with that?
I mean, these people are just idiots. I really, I'm at the point where it's become really hard to have an intellectual debate with any of these people because the level of stupidity that they are displaying every single day is frankly embarrassing, not just in Congress, but as Americans. And the fact that these people are allowed to say just the most ridiculous things tells you that the dumbing of the United States has arrived, because how else do we get a Trump presidency again?
Wow. She just called me stupid. and she called you an idiot. Now, listen, I have no problem if she wants to say that Congressman Gill is the idiot. That's fine, right? He said something about her. She could say something about him. By the way, I met him briefly, shook his hand at Mar-a-Lago. Seems a heck of a nice guy. Beautiful family, very nice wife, and a beautiful little baby. And I think that she, Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, is not doing herself any favors by saying that Americans are somehow idiot. And how else do you get a Trump presidency again, right? I think this is not a good look. Just like when she said some people did something, I think that was insulting to New Yorkers and Americans alike. And I think right now she's in the same spot. But I don't know. You let me know. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to George, Rochester, Minnesota, KZPK. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, Rich. How are you this evening?
Wonderful, thanks. I feel, insulted by Ilhan Omar, but otherwise I'll survive.
You know what? I think Ilhan Omar, she's got a few issues. It's okay for her to stand up and say how terrible America is, but when somebody says something to her that she doesn't like, she takes a personal offense to it. Yeah. The whole squad, I'm sorry, but the whole squad needs to be deposed. Look, when you go to Congress, you represent not only the people of your area, but you also represent America.
Of course.
And it's not about your personal feelings. It is about the privileges and the benefits of the people that you are representing. And it should never be taken lightly by them. But that wasn't why I got on the call. I just started hearing about Ilhan Omar, and she's definitely not. I'm not a fan of hers, or Rashid, or any of the other ones.
Not a fan of the squad. Well, what's on your mind tonight, George?
Well, what it was, I was listening to you earlier, and you were talking about paying down the debt and whether it should be a dividend to the taxpayers or just go down to, the savings go down to paying the debt. Personally, I think it should be a combination of both.
Yeah.
But here's the caveat. If you're going to give a refund to taxpayers, it should be the taxpayers that file tax returns for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. Otherwise, if you say, if Trump comes out, and I'm a supporter of Trump, okay? If Trump or DOGE comes out and say, well, we're going to give a credit on the 2025 tax returns, all of a sudden you're going to have people that haven't filed taxes in years, haven't paid a penny in, and haven't incurred or any of their money go to this debt that are going to be filing tax returns just to get the credit.
Right. Well, I think ultimately what happens here, and I believe you, and I think we saw similar with COVID and whatnot, I think this is going to be one of those things is if you've ever gotten a tax return, you're likely going to get one of these payments because the number they've come up with, it seems to be paid for already because it was already appropriated for something else. So it's not at a loss and it's not being printed for this particular purpose, which is why they say it won't be inflationary. So thank you, George. I appreciate it. Very good points, by the way. Jerome, Charleston, South Carolina. I'll have to holler at you tomorrow. But folks, hasta la próxima. Until the next time, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.